This is round 6 of Reykjavik Open, and before this round started, I was exhausted. I had just played my game against Eric Rosen. I'd had lunch, actually with Eric. We spoke about the game. It was pretty great. And then I had no time to check the pairings because the pairings came out like 40 minutes before the game started. So I was really exhausted before this game, and I was feeling kind of nervous because I thought, okay, I might play against someone that's lower rated, but I'm super tired. And I actually had considered taking a bye that round just because I felt like my game against Eric hadn't been so good. I thought maybe I needed a rest. But I decided to not take a rest. I decided to push through, and I played round 6. Now in this round, I was playing against a Finnish player who was 1600 rated, but he had drawn against the 2000 before. So I thought, okay, if I'm not careful, I might not win the game. So I had to really play my best. So the game went e4, c5, knight f3, e6, and now he went for the Alapin. Now my mom, before the game started, she said, Anna, I think your opponent is gonna play the Alapin. So I was kind of mentally prepared for it, but I did not want to enter all of the standard Alapin positions of pushing up the knight and then getting this kind of stuff, because I actually have really bad track record with this. I don't know why, but this bishop always ends up coming here, and somehow my h7 pawn is always in trouble when I do this. So I did not want to play this against him. In fact, after my very tactical game against Eric Rosen, where I was trying to play very aggressively, I wanted to play very positionally, and I wanted to play a game where there was no risk of me losing. I really wanted to make sure of that. So I went instead for this move that I've never played before, d5. And this is a move that you can play, and simply just becomes a different kind of position. And actually, I really like this. I might start playing this more. So he captured, and went d4. It's really important that he goes d4, because otherwise I'm going to be able to go d4 myself and really take all the center. And after knight f6, bishop e2, this move was a little bit like saying, okay, I'm just going to hold my horses. No, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not very aggressive. It's like, oh, like I'm taking like a little wait, like, wait a second, you know, like it's not so aggressive. Like, I was more scared of him going bishop d3 and putting the bishop on this diagonal looking towards my king. I really just hate when they do it. So here I thought that I had already, like, this position was already equal because I have center. I have, you know, as good development as my opponent. There was nothing crazy. And so I was really happy with my opening here because I just had a normal chess game with no crazy things going on. So knight c6, I was just developing all my pieces. I ended up going bishop e7 as well. I wanted to capture this pawn, but I just wanted it to do, I wanted to wait for him to get this knight out and then capture, because then if he captured with the pawn, the knight would be weirdly placed here. So I was like kind of waiting for that, but he never did it. He went bishop g5, and so I just ended up taking the pawn. He took it back with the pawn. I thought he might take it with the knight. And now I just went h6 just to make sure I never get back ranked. I said goodbye to the bishop. The bishop moved and I castled. And now we're starting soon to enter the middle game. I've already developed all of my pieces. Well, after knight c3, bishop e6, the opening is done. It's now time for the middle game. And this looks like a very solid position. I mean, there wasn't much going on, and I was actually playing all these moves really quickly. I kind of remembered how, like, slow I played all the other games, and I just did not want to repeat it. So I was playing pretty quickly, and I also did one new thing this game, which was that I had a different mindset. And that mindset was that I was actually, throughout this whole game, trying to play the most logical moves. And you may say, Anna, you play chess, like you probably do this all the time. No, I typically don't. Actually, typically what I've done throughout my whole life when I've played chess is that I've thought about what move do I want to play, not what move is most logical to play in this position. What would the engine think is a good move in this position? I never have this mindset. I always have the mindset, what do I in this moment want to play? And so I changed that here. And I actually think it worked really well to think about chess in that way, because it made me not do moves that I said, okay, the engine probably hates it, but I'm going to do it anyway because I like it. It made me stop doing those sort of moves and really take the position for what it is. And yeah, I wanted to share that because it was actually a pretty big realization. So we got the middle game now. He went rook e1. He wanted to develop the rook. And in this position, I wanted to somehow change the pawn structure. Because if I have this exact same pawn structure, where basically it's very equal and symmetrical, it's harder for me to create weaknesses in my opponent's position. So I decided that I wanted to go for this move knight e4, which is a move that I thought I couldn't do later on, because if I don't do this now, he might go bishop d3 and stop me. So I actually really like this move knight e4. The idea of this is that either he exchanges here, and then my pawn will go up. Let's say that he would go for something like, because this bishop is hanging too, so he needs to take care of this situation. So he went takes, and I had to capture with the knight, very important. If I take with the queen, it's going to be kind of bad. After takes and push, it's a fork. So I have to take with the knight. And then if he would capture here, I thought my position would be quite good, because this knight is hanging, and after the knight goes somewhere, the knight doesn't have so many squares to go to. This pawn becomes a huge weakness. There's no pawn that can defend it. The knight cannot defend it. And after I go something like rook c8, I'm threatening to go f6 and almost trapping this knight. I mean, this knight has very few squares to go to. So I really like this. So after he captured on e7 and I captured back the bishop, he didn't want to capture my knight. So instead, he simply went bishop d3 and said, Anna, where is your knight going? But now my other idea was actually that I wanted to capture his knight and create this pawn as a weakness. And from this point onwards, the whole game was based on this pawn right here. Why? Because this is what we call a backwards pawn. This is a pawn that is not defended by any other pawn, but it also cannot push, because then I would capture it. So this pawn is very lonely. This pawn is completely alone. And if I am able to enter an endgame where I ultimately win this pawn, well, then my chances are going to be really high of winning the game, because I'll be a pawn up in an endgame, which typically is going to make you win the game. So I got really excited about this, and over here I already felt like I had a really good position. So the whole game was just about winning this pawn. That became my goal. So what I had to make sure of the whole time was that I did not allow this pawn to push one step and exchange itself. That was the most important part. So here I played rook c8, threatening the pawn, but also activating my rook. And he went queen b3, which I was expecting, defending the pawn, but also putting some pressure on b7. Now here, I could go queen a5, and I could take this pawn and give away this one, but I wanted to take this pawn without giving anything else. I just wanted to have that pawn as an extra pawn in my pocket. So I went rook c7 here with the double idea, first and foremost, of defending this pawn, but also of allowing my queen to come up to c8 and stand behind the rook to be able to put pressure on this pawn, and also so that the rook would be defending this knight, which is actually, if you look through x-rays, being sort of attacked by this rook. So if I move the bishop, this knight is going to be hanging. So I went rook c7 to keep everything defended. He went knight e5 because he wanted to bring up the knight into the center. And here it was the time where I needed to start thinking about what pieces do I want to exchange. Because that is actually a really big thing in chess. It's like, if you know what pieces you want to exchange, it's going to make your life a lot easier. So I was really thinking, and I ended up thinking that I wanted to exchange this bishop for this one, because I thought that this bishop was pretty bad. And I thought if I'm able to get rid of this bishop, then all of a sudden my opponent is not going to be able to control this square in this one. This one is only going to be able, the c4 square is only going to be able to be controlled by the knight. But if I am at some point able to place a knight on c4, and I'm thinking a lot of moves in the future, if I am somehow able to place a knight here on c4, and I'm able to get rid of both of his minor pieces and only have my big pieces, you know, the rooks and the queens, that's what we call the big pieces in chess. If I'm able to only have those pieces, well, then it's going to be really hard for him to defend this pawn. It's actually only with his minor pieces that he's ultimately going to be able to defend this pawn, because I'm always going to be able to place more big pieces together with a pawn and threaten this. So this may not make a lot of sense right now, but you guys are going to see that my whole game is going to be based on one, threatening this pawn, but also at this point exchanging all the minor pieces to be able to stop my opponent from defending this pawn. So I went bishop f5 to exchange. And the idea is also that if he exchanges, my knight gets up over here. And look at all of these squares that my knight can get to. My knight has some beautiful, amazing squares. And it all is about the squares as well. So he went queen c2, which Yeah, I thought was a little bit slow, but he's threatening my bishop. But now I was able to go queen c8 and go for the move that I really wanted to do, both threatening on c3, but also defending my bishop. My queen over here is very sneaky, doing lots of different things. So he went rook ac1, and now I did a move which at first my mom didn't like, but I liked, and my mom ended up liking. So I went for this move, b5. Now I knew that this move had its risks. The risk of this move is that when I go b5, I am actually saying, hey, if you ever get your knight to this square right here, I am never going to be able to go b6 and threaten your knight. Your knight is going to be a monster here. It's going to stay there forever. So it's a risk. But the idea of this move is that I'm threatening to go b4, and because of my little battery that I have lined up over here, it's going to be hard for my opponent to capture on b4 because I'll be able to capture the stuff that's behind. And if he doesn't capture, I might win a pawn. Guys, my errors are so bad. I might win a pawn. So that was the idea of b5. So I know it was a move that had its risks, but I thought those risks were worth it. So he went queen e2, pressuring b5, and I kept on thinking, you know, should I capture on c3? Is this the best move? But I did not want to give a single pawn. So I think a6 was much better because I am right now defending this pawn, but I still have the same threats as before, which are to capture on c3. So he ended up now capturing on f5, and this is now a mistake. He shouldn't get rid of his bishops because he's now opening up the path for my knight to get to the best square possible. So he went back to d2 with the queen, and I started remaneuvering my knight. And now I have this huge threat of placing my knight over here on this square, threatening both the queen and this pawn. So we can see that actually his moves are being a little bit slow. But it's hard for him to play anything. It's really hard. So he went f3 to stop my knight from coming up here. But now I could finally go for the idea that I had the whole time of forcing an exchange of knights. And after these knights are exchanged, all of a sudden, we only have the major pieces left. We only have the rooks and the queens. And I knew in this position that I was going to end up winning this pawn because I have this idea of going queen c6, doubling up the rooks, going b4, and it's impossible to defend this pawn. And I actually think that this is quite instructional when it comes to positional chess. So this is a plan that you can bring to your own games, but I think that this is pretty instructional. So I was not giving away any pawn here. Once again, I could have pushed b4 to try to win this pawn, but why give a pawn in the process? Why not just defend everything and then pick up my pawn, you know? So I went here defending my pawn. He went rook e7 because he wanted to go queen f4 and threaten this pawn, but I simply now went b4. And after he pushed his queen, I mean, he cannot defend now. I was simply able to capture on c3, and I did it with the pawn to make this pawn become a passed pawn. So now he was running out of ideas, and I was really happy actually because I was able to find some good moves here. After he went rook c2, he's blocking my progress with the pawn. I was able to push my queen to a4, and this is a great move because one, I'm threatening his rook, but two, I'm threatening this pawn over here, so it's sort of like a fork, and he cannot defend both things at the same time. And actually, when I went over here, I had already calculated like the winning line basically, and I think this is like all forced. So he has to go rook e2. He has to bring back the rook to defend the other one, because if he goes something like going rook back, then I can first capture here, and then I'll be able to push the pawn, and then it's over. So he has to pretty much go back and defend the rook, but then I'm able to take the pawn and threaten the queen. Now here the queen has to go somewhere, and if, for instance, the queen would go here, then I have, whoops, if the queen goes here, then I have, if the queen goes here, then I have check, and then I'm able to just push this pawn. Oh, actually, oh, there's a checkmate here. Okay, I did not see this during the game, but whatever. I knew that this was winning. So anyways, he ended up going queen c1. He ended up retreating with the queen. And now I had rook d3, which is doing a lot of different things. One, it's defending this pawn, but I am also having this really sneaky threat of going check and then bringing the rook to the back rank and winning the queen. So he went g3, just to make sure that he can move the king up. And I went for queen d4 check anyways. So check, the king went up, rook here. And now if the queen moves somewhere, this is pretty much going to be a checkmate. So he has to go queen e3 and exchange queens. But after takes, and push, these two passed pawns are amazing. They're like literally the most amazing thing ever. If you're able to get passed pawns like this in chess, connected passed pawns, you know you're winning pretty much. This is amazing. I mean, I don't even need this rook. This would be winning even if this rook was gone pretty much. Well, not really, because I guess then he could sacrifice here. But I mean, like, pretty much. These pawns are just, like, amazing by themselves. So the rook moved, and now I went for this check. And if he takes, if he goes takes and takes, there's no way of stopping my pawn. This is going to become a queen. So instead, he retreated with the rook. And now after I took and took, I pushed d3, and my opponent resigned. Why? Because he has no way of stopping my two pawns from promoting. I mean, one of these pawns are going to promote, and I don't even need to use my rook for that. So here my opponent resigned, and he ended up saying, I never had a chance, or something like that after the game. He was super nice, and I think that was actually a pretty instructional game. I was really happy with this game, and when I analyzed it with like the chess.com engine, it said that I had an accuracy of 98.9%, so pretty much 99%, which I was really happy about because the game was like 37 moves long, so it was actually a pretty long game. So I'm really happy that my logic worked in this game, and I hope that this was instructional for you. There's a little bit more of an positional Anna, which we don't get very often, but I liked it. I liked playing positionally. Now in 2.5 hours, I'm going to be playing round number 7. And today I'm playing against a Swedish girl called Julia. And I'm really excited. It's going to be really fun. Actually, I think that my mom like coaches her a little bit. So yeah, it's going to be fun to play her. She's like 1800 rated. So we will see how it goes. I'll be making a recap of that game too. And I'm right now on 3 out of 6 points. So if I would win this afternoon, we would get 4 out of 7, which would be pretty good. But now we just go for this game. We're on 3 out of 6, and we'll see how it goes. Wish me good luck, everybody, and thank you so much for watching the video.